Hi students, welcome back to the next video of this chapter wherein we'll cover some questions as well as the quick revision of this chapter. So the very first question says, what do you understand by domestic violence? List the two rights that have the new law help achieve for women who are survivors of violence. Okay. So what do we understand by the word domestic violence? So domestic violence is any kind of any injury or harm to the women of the house. It could be mother, it could be sister, it could be wife. Particularly there are wives. So any injury or harm to the women by the husband or the male of the house, which could be father also, by the husband. Most probably it is between husband and wife, but since we'll take the holistic idea of it, so any injury or harm to the women by the husband or any male of the house, is known as domestic violence. Now that injury or harm could be physical injury, it could be mental injury, it could be economical abuse, it could be sexual abuse, it could be any of them and not particularly physical injury. So any kind of harm, any kind of injury, any kind of torture which is physical, mental, sexual or economical is included in domestic violence, which is particularly done by the male of the house, which is mostly the husband. List the two rights that the new law, the one that we read in the previous video, help achieve for women who are the survivors of the violence. First, it safeguards the women. It safeguards the women and protects them from the physical violence and the mental violence at their home. So in case that their husband tries to violate the law or still physically do domestic violence against them, then they can fearlessly report about them. They can fearlessly go into the court to get the justice. So this particular law safeguards the women from being exploited by their husbands, by their men. The second reason, the second right that has been given is the medical aid, monetary aid, not medical aid, the monetary aid. So in case that the husband or the male of the house is exploiting the women by domestic violence, physical violence, mental violence, any kind of violence, then the woman has the right to ask the monetary aid. The government provides the monetary aid to the women. Monetary aid means some money to the women for taking care of herself. So these are the two rights which are provided under this act. Moving on. Okay, so here we come to the next topic, which is unpopular and controversial laws. So by as of now, we have read what are laws, how are laws made, and how the idea of new laws come. But there are also some unpopular and controversial laws in the country. And those unpopular and controversial laws could be many. But whenever Parliament fails to understand that this is an unpopular law or this law won't, help in the betterment of the people, citizens criticize that particular law by protesting, by raising their voice against the government, so on and so forth. So in such cases, citizens can express criticism and approach the courts also. So in case any law which has been passed by the Parliament, which the citizens feel is not right for them, they can criticize against the government by raising their voice, by protesting and asking them to shut this law or ask them to modify the law. Okay. Give an example of an unpopular and controversial law. So this was one law. This was according to the municipality law. Municipality law says that the vendors, that is the fruit sellers particularly, or the vegetable sellers, are not, or the hawkers also, the fruit sellers, the vegetable sellers, the vendors, the hawkers are not allowed to sell their goods on the footpath. Now, this particular law was prevailing in the country. According to the municipality laws, the vendors, the fruit sellers, and the hawkers were not allowed to stand at the footpath and sell their goods. Now, this particular law came into the country, and wonder what happened. So basically, this particular law was prevailing into the country, and the fruit vendors, the fruit sellers, the vendors, and the hawkers who probably don't have a shop to sell their goods and products. That is why they are standing on the footpath and trying to sell their goods as much as they can. So they do not have any other place to go and sell it. And if such laws will prevail into the country where it will not be allowed for them to stand on the footpath, you think how, it is quite obvious that they won't have any other place to go and sell their products. And that is why it is very wrong to say that these food vendors and all of that, they are not allowed to stand on the footpath, because they only have that particular place to sell their products. If they don't have any shop to access, they don't have any other place to go, and footpath is easily accessible to them to sell their goods, to sell their products. And that is why it was quite wrong. This law was quite wrong. This was against the interest of one of the part of the society, or one group of the society, and thus people, citizens, these vendors and fruit sellers started protesting against the government. They started raising voice, and they wanted this law to be abolished. They wanted this law to be changed and modified and amended, and that is why they raised their voice. So this was an example of an unpopular and controversial laws, due to which people come up and raise their voice because they want that particular law to get abolished or abandoned, or to get changed, modified, so on, so forth. Moving on. Unpopular and controversial laws, our role as citizens does not end with electing our representatives. Very true. So since I told you that we have been given the right to elect our own elected representatives, and thus we have a direct participation, because we are the ones who are electing our government. We are the ones who are forming the government. So there is a directive participation, but this directive participation does not end up till voting, up till the process of voting. It is much more than that. How it is much more than that? Because in case that there is a particular law which the people are against, in case there is a particular law which people don't like, which people feel that they are not for the betterment of the society, they will criticize on that particular law. And if the parliament will make such laws which would be against the interest of the people won't allow the government to have a peaceful functioning of the government. So the parliament has to keep in mind the laws that it is making, the laws that have been implemented, the laws that the parliament is making, because the people are the ones who have to follow those laws. And if people won't be happy, it wouldn't allow the parliament to function, the government, it wouldn't allow the government to function the country peacefully, which is actually the motive of the government. But that is why the government should keep in mind the needs of the citizen, the interest of the citizens while making the laws. And we could say that this is how the citizens have even a lot of participation during the implementation of the laws also, because at the end of the day they are the ones who have to follow those laws. And it is the involvement of people that helps the parliament perform the function properly. Involvement of people means if the people will follow the law, if the people will like the law, if the people will support the law, only then the parliament will be able to function properly. Otherwise it will criticize, if the citizens will criticize the laws again and again, the parliament won't be able to function properly. So thus citizens play a very important role. They have a direct participation, not up till voting, but they have an involvement in the laws, they have an involvement in the implementation of the laws, they have an involvement, in fact, in the criticization of the laws also. Moving forward with the very first question, which is, write in your own words, what do you understand by the term the rule of law? In your response, include a fictitious or real example of violation of the rule of law. So rule of law, I'll just write here. Rule of law basically states that every person is equal before the law. That is, every person, no matter any government official, prime minister, president, or even the wealthiest person, has to abide by the laws. So this is the simplest language in which I could explain you that what do we mean by rule of law. Rule of law basically states that each and every person is equal before the law, which apparently means that no matter the person is the most powerful person, the most wealthiest person, is the prime minister, president of the country, no matter whichever position the person holds, he has to follow, he has to abide by the laws, and in case he does not, he will be punished for the same. And in your response, include a real example of the violation. So you will violate the rule of law in case that you doesn't follow the law, or in case that you does not get punished when you didn't follow the law. So this could be the violation of the rule of law. So the real example is, now in case we have seen that is, if there is a government official who is at a very powerful position, and let's assume that his relative is one of his relatives accidentally uh, you know on the road was basically the relative of this government official was driving his car at a very high speed, and accidentally it led to a very major accident. And the problem was majorly from the side of the relative of this government official. Means it was his mistakes. 80% of the mistake was the relative of the government official, and now he knows that he will be punished for the same. He will be put into the jail for the same. But because he government official is at a very high position, he holds a very high position, so he has the power somehow to save him from being put into the jail. So this is a direct violation of the rule of law, that even if the person has done a crime, even if the person has broken the rule, he has not been punished for the same, because he is a relative of the government official, and government official is at a very high position, and he saves the relative. So this is a violation of the law, where the government official uses his power to save his relative, even after he has done something wrong to the country, to the people of the country. Even if he has broken the laws in the country, still the government official has the power to save him. So this is a violation of the law. Here we could see that not all the people are the same, because the person who has to face the accident, the person who was injured during the accident, will feel that he didn't get justice, because the relative of this government official wouldn't be put into the jail, since he will save his relative. So this is a complete violation of the rule of law. State any two reasons why historians refute the claim that the Britishers introduced the rule of law. So one of the reasons why the historians refute, is because the laws that the Britishers made were arbitrary, means they were just in the favor of the Britishers and not for the betterment of the society. So there were arbitrary laws like the Sedition Act and the Rowlatt Act. Moving forward. Okay. Also, it told that not only the Britishers introduced, but also the nationalist leaders. The nationalist leaders protested against these arbitrary rules, to include the idea of justice in the country. So the two reasons why historians refute, because the Britishers brought the arbitrary laws into the country. Second, the nationalist leaders actually They protested against these arbitrary laws to bring the idea of justice in the country in the constitution, because the nationalist leaders always wanted a free and democratic country, a democratic India, a free India. Describe the different ways in which women's group worked to promote the prevention of the Domestic Violence Act. So, as I told you that the two women started this organization, and gradually all the women who were facing the same problem joined the organization. So, describe the different ways in which women groups worked to promote the prevention of the Domestic Violence Act. They made organizations, they formed associations, they joined organizations, they raised their voice, they protested against the government, they came together as a whole and worked to promote the prevention of the Domestic Violence Act. So apparently, what basically happened was that they formed organizations, they formed associations, they joined organizations, they raised their voice, they protested, and this is how they prevented the Domestic Violence Act. Okay, so a quick revision of it at the end of the series of questions. The very first question, the very first point is, in Indian democracy, the parliament is in charge of making laws. The rule of law applies to each and every person, no matter he is the PM, he is the president, or he is the wealthiest person. You don't care. The law does not care about that. Laws are applicable to each and every person, and everybody has to abide those laws. In ancient India, laws did not apply equally to all, and this is said to have changed during the colonial rule. Yes, because we had different kings for different states, and so different kings had their own set of rules, and so the laws were not applied to each and every person. So the Britishers decided to make common rules, common laws for the entire country, and so the laws were being introduced, the rule of law was being introduced in the country, but the Britishers made arbitrary rules. They made arbitrary rules, and under arbitrary rules, they made Sedition Act, which says Sedition Act said that it was due to Sedition Act said that the citizens of the country are not allowed to protest or criticize against the government, and uh, because of these arbitrary rules, the nationalist leader protested against those arbitrary rules, because they always wanted the idea of justice into the constitution. The parliament then comes forward and does what is necessary when people demand for the certain laws. Now then we understood how the idea of the new laws come up, and we understood how, if there is a need, in the citizens, if there is a problem that is being faced by the citizens come up in the form of organization, in the form of associations, in the form of by raising their voices. So the citizens come up and they try the parliament to hear their problem, and when the parliament hears their problem, in order to find the solution, a law is basically made in the country to solve that particular problem. So this is how new laws are made in the country, and the parliament has to be very sensitive, because it has to make laws which solves the problem of the people, and has to be very sensitive, because different people have different interests, and has to make sure that it does not hinder the interest of one part of the society in the making of the laws, in order to protect the interest of the other part of the society. Now sometimes the laws passed by the parliament can be constitutionally valid, but unpopular. Constitutionally valid means parliament might think that this law will help the society or will be for the betterment of the society, but when this law gets implemented into the country, the people does not feel the same way. They feel that they are not for their betterment, that this particular law is causing them a lot of problem. And the role of the citizens is crucial in helping parliament frame different concerns that people might have into laws. Now, the unpopular laws which the parliament feels is right is because they feel that this will help the people, this is for the betterment of the people, but apparently that does not is liked by the people. The scenario is quite different when the law is being implemented into the country, and so if the people feel like this is a controversial law and this is not for the betterment, the people start to protest, criticize the government for the same, because they want that law to be abolished or abandoned or modified or so and so forth. And so the role of the citizens is crucial in helping the parliament frame different concerns that people might have into laws. Now it is the role of the citizens. The role of the citizens is not only up to voting. It is not only up to voting. It is much more than that, because it helps the parliament to frame the laws which solves the problem of the people, which solves the problem of the people. Which solves the problem of the people. It also, the citizens also criticize against the government in case a law has been made in the country which is not for the betterment of the society. It also helps the parliament to check if, so basically the citizens not only participate in the process of voting for electing their representatives, but also but also helps the parliament to frame different laws for the betterment of the society, for solving the problems of the different people. Also, the citizens make sure that the parliament knows that this particular law is not for the betterment of the society, and the citizens also, in case that they feel that this law is not for the betterment, the citizens also criticize against that particular law, and the parliament comes to know, and then the parliament works on that particular law, either modifies or abolishes that particular law. So this is basically the role of citizens. Apparently, indirectly or directly, the citizens are the ones who they are the ones who are the part of the country. They have to follow the laws, and they are the ones who directly participate in the functioning of the government, and they hold a very, very important place. They hold a very, very important place in the country. If they wouldn't like a particular law, they will criticize the government, and they wouldn't let the government function the country properly. That is why it is very important for the citizens to be satisfied with the laws, be satisfied with the government. That is why the citizens hold a very important place in the country. This brings us to the end of the chapter. We'll connect in the next chapter. By then, thank you so much for joining me on Study.